I always feel like it's one faculty meeting when at some point
Yes, yes.
I have to stand up
Yes, and say,
and
but.
say, just remember that we always have, you know, I don't know how many, let's say about between 30 and 40 PGs every year, something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, 30, 35.
Total,
yes.
right?
Correct.
And half of those are international students who never create any trouble for anybody. And much on the contrary, you know, they are fantastic kids that
Dedicated
everybody
students,
loves.
yeah.
And they arrive here coming
Yeah.
from these totally different cultures and they adapt super quickly. Most likely they're among the best students in everybody's classes. And somehow they're always forgotten in these conversations, but I think the reason why they are forgotten is that it's a good reason. Is
Yes.
that you're not
Yeah, yeah.
causing trouble
That's
to
right,
anybody.
that's right.
And you really, I think, help to bring that level of diversity. Even, I mean, how many students from these classes manage to make such a huge impression on the school community in 1 year, right? There are kids who are here for 4 years. You never hear about them. Most of the Kemper kids do something amazing or more than one thing.
Or just are amazing.
Yeah, or just are amazing
Yeah.
to a point that it's recognized. It's just that they're not thought of as the quote unquote PG problem because they're not the problem. So, yeah.
And I wonder, you know, sort of, I wonder how you guys feel. I sometimes think it must be odd, not the German kids again because they're younger, but for you guys, some of you are 19, maybe 20 even sometimes.
Sometimes people have had their 20th.
How strange it is for you guys culturally.
Oh,
to
we were
come-
talking about that.
Not just to America, but to a boarding school in
Yeah,
America
yeah,
where, you
yeah.
know, the doors lock at 10.
Yeah.
You know, there's the whole cultural piece about what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do and the rules here. It must
Yeah.
be, you guys are always very mature about saying, okay, this is the deal, we're here
Yeah.
for a year. But you're adults back home.
Yeah.
Fully fledged adults.
That's
You can
exactly
do,
what we were talking
you can do
about.
everything,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? It's very interesting for you guys and like, you know, like,
Yeah, and I was actually, once you walked in, I was asking if, you know, in your conversations with the people who have been here the year before and now, you know, going home and talking to the kids who are coming next year, do you tell them that, you know, they're really gonna be treated like
younger people.
12-year-olds, right?
Yeah.
People are gonna be checking where they are at 10 o'clock, you know?
Do you tell people that?
We haven't been told this, and like we have a theory about it that like probably at the end of the year, campers tend to remember just the nice things and
Of
like
course.
just little struggles, so they even forget to mention
Yeah.
them.
Because it doesn't really matter that much maybe, which is good.
Yeah, because like we
Yeah.
sometimes like feel overburdened by these rules, but also as you said, it's a deal,
next time.
and the advantages outnumber
Yeah.
these little things.
And that's a
that we
mark of
get.
your maturity and intelligence, the fact that you
Yeah.
even see it that way.
Yeah.
Right, right.
So in other words, even if you knew, you would still
Of
have
course.
come.
Yeah.
Okay.
Why fight that? Right,
Yeah.
don't come.
And actually, we
Right.
talked with Ms. Jameson and the committee that chooses for campus scholars, and they said one of the things they look for is maturity.
Oh,
Mhm.
That I guess is
Independence.
Yes, you have to
But
have.
it was interesting, you have met Hannah Hagemeyer from 2 years ago, and she was mentioning that there's a lot of hand-holding in her school that she returned to in Germany, and that she liked the freedom of choosing classes. Even
Oh,
though
yeah.
you always complain
kinds
there's
of freedom.
2 term commitments for those
Yeah.
2 classes and
Yeah.
not much wiggle room to choose the electives, but they come out with an experience like college from here. And for her it was hard because there's a track, she has to follow it, and she doesn't like it as much.
Well, the history here for the international students used to be a whole year. And I
Yeah.
pushed for it to be 2 terms because I think that you needed
It's
to go and
nice
do
to
something
choose
else.
something, exactly.
You wanted to go and
Yeah.
do something else because,
Yeah.
you know, you learn to read and write in
Yeah.
American,
Yeah.
not English, in American.
In America.
So quickly that
Yeah.
it seemed to make sense, and we
Yeah.
didn't feel that you needed
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
much of that US
Yeah.
history. You needed to get a broad overview.
Yeah.
And they truly enjoy that. May I ask on that note a question? Do the two of you sometimes connect with one another and talk about who teaches what at what time?
We're getting better.
So that, like the alignment of when to learn to write papers aligns kind of with what you do
Yeah.
at the time. they
Actually,
Not so much
related.
that.
We talked about that in my very early years teaching the course. We actually had originally thought about doing the two courses in a much more aligned
Yeah.
way. But then it proved to be very difficult because the material in early colonial history
Doesn't
is
lend
just-
itself to literature.
Doesn't lend itself to
No.
literature in the way that
Yeah.
I need to work.
Yeah.
I mean, even though, again, the development is super quick, but in the beginning, most students don't have the linguistic skills
Yeah.
to be
read that
able to
early
be
stuff.
reading that early,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
Puritan,
Oh no.
colonial, like
No.
stuff,
No, it's too difficult.
right? It's just too difficult and not satisfying as,
No, you don't wanna do it.
texts, really. And I wouldn't want to kill the joy
It's horrible.
of
It's horrible
doing
stuff,
it.
yeah.
So we realized that it made more sense if we were going to do something together to do it towards the end. Like, for example, when we are reading Sula, you are doing the same years in American history, so there are many more opportunities for connection.
We found a couple of touch points at the Addison that we'll do it even more next year. I
Yes.
think we had 2 double periods at the Addison, and then we tried to do it the second time, and then I got derailed for some reason.
You got sick.
I got sick, something got sick, and I got all messed
Yeah.
up. But we're trying to find some touch points through some materials that speak to threads in both our classes, and I think
Yeah.
that's a good way to go.
Yeah.
And we're going to work more.
It's a
on
better
that.
way to connect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one as the academic advisor of all the One Year International seniors, including the PGs, I learned one interesting thing this year from one student who said, I wish in fall term, when I think the time they start writing papers in history, she would have been equipped at the same time with the English.
But
And
that's
so the technical things.
Yeah.
align
Maria
with
has a
that.
response to that.
Well, first of all, the papers are completely different, and I have learned that the styles that you ask for and
Yes.
the other English and other
Yeah.
histories are different. And then to arrive at an English critical paper, you need to go through the personal essay, and I mean it's
Yes,
a much
which
longer
they do.
process.
Yeah, yeah. That's the thing, it wouldn't work as well. And I know it takes a while, and I know in the beginning, that's another thing. The style of writing that we do in the beginning of the fall term is something that is not very common, I think, in European programs, like that idea of writing about yourself and the personal essay. And I've actually had students, some of the Kemper scholars in the past, who have actively resisted that kind of writing. And Mr. Rabi remembers that. I had students saying, I refuse to write about my personal experience and have you or a peer in the class read about it. I'm not sharing my secrets with anybody.
And by the
This
way,
is
I'm homesick.
ridiculous. I don't want to do this. I mean, that was an extreme reaction, but it speaks to the idea that this kind of writing is not very common. One more reason for you to do it, because that's what America is all about. Pour your soul
Yeah, I
into
can't
the
do that
page
either.
and
Yeah.
show it to the whole world.
No, I don't like that either. No, I mean, I wouldn't fight my teacher, but no, I would find that difficult too.
Yes,
Yes, history's a bit safer in that.
Yeah, exactly.
So
But
it makes sense to start before.
yeah, but then we go through that, right, and working on that whole show, don't tell. That's the perfect medium to get started with it, even though I understand, especially with the Kempers, there's a little bit of frustration sometimes, and in extreme cases,
I thought it was just the
resistance to
English. Is
that.
it other Europeans don't like it either?
It's just,
I mean,
it's just not part of the tradition. Some kids love. I've had people. Mr. Abi might remember Aline. She loved it. She loved it. She was like, "Oh my God, this is the best thing ever."
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, in France, I have to do these things
Aline,
and those
that's
things and
right.
those things. And here you're telling me to just write about myself. Oh my God, I love it. So some people love it, but most people are just not used to it,
Right.
and it takes a while. But then we build from there, step by step, into the critical paper. So it wouldn't work as well to start with the critical paper, because
Yeah, whereas my stuff's all that. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what we do. Yeah.
yeah, and in that way, I'm also following the curriculum of the English department.
You
Right,
have
we-
a tall order because you have to do kind of in a
3
nutshell.
years in 2
3
terms.
years, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the way to do it. I mean, that's one way to do it that makes sense in terms of that practice, consistent practice of writing. Yeah.
So framing is everything, you know, to
Yeah.
explain.
Yeah, and I've been trying
Because
to
they
explain.
are, at that
yeah.
point, they are also making that cultural transition, which
Yeah.
can be hard. And I
Yeah.
remember that particular student was very homesick, and that's why whenever she was asked
Yes.
to write that personal essay, she said, I can't do it. I'm thinking
Yeah,
of
it
home
was
and
too
I'm
difficult.
homesick and I'm crying every time I put my
It's hard.
notes
But there
together.
was something about this idea that I was asking her to share her secrets, and that was not the case at all. I said, you don't have to write about anything that you don't want to share. It's just to write about something that has happened to
From
you.
your personal experience.
Yeah,
rather than
exactly.
Or
saying-
sometimes you even say that you witnessed. So,
Yeah, exactly,
So you can pick and
exactly.
choose.
But I think that's where the idea that, you know, in the case of the German Kempers, they are 2 years younger. That's every now and then. And most of the time you don't really notice the difference because I think there's a certain level of maturity that all of them operate under.
Yeah, I think
But
so.
every now and then there are some moments when, you know, oh,
They're definitely 16,
they're a
not
little
19.
younger. Yeah, and then
They're
it's like,
lowers,
okay.
really. They're
Yeah,
lowers.
they're lowers,
Yeah.
they're lowers, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that for me with the writing, it's